All right, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Designer's Den. On today's episode, we are actually going T. Julian Bell, who I don't like emails because that's a bit of a mouthful. Same reason I shortened my name, honestly. Um, and we are here today to talk a little bit about obviously the game, which is the namesake game or flagship game for Dark Veil Studios, a bit of both actually, which is currently in Kickstarter. But before we dive into all of that, I just want to thank you so much for being here today, Julian, and let you introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your history in the tabletop industry, and kind of like how'd you get to this point.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited to have this conversation. So, again, my name is T. Julian Bell. I'm the creative director and the owner of Dark Veil Studios. And our first IP that we are releasing is Dark Veil, a role playing game, TTRPG. We also have a board game that will carry the name of Dark Veil plus a subheading of name that will be coming out next year. And there's a series of books and novels and other Studios just was.
You kind of
Go
cut
ahead.
out there for a second. A series of books and novels.
Yeah, so we have a series of books that will be coming out that are in novel form. Next year will probably be the start of those, and they all take place within the Dark Veil universe. So it is a Dark Veil Studios exists because we knew that we'll be doing more than just the TTRPG,
Hmm.
and that's why we wanted to name it that, just to remind people of this was the the flagship for us.
Yeah, and it all ties together. And I personally um am always super excited when somebody's like, we're gonna have novelizations about the world because, gosh, I love to read. So, I imagine we're in a hobby where people like to read. So I imagine a lot of other people would be kind of thrilled by that because as much as like a good source book is good, like it's often so dense. And that makes it kind of hard to like absorb all of the cool things about all of the worlds, which, take for example, Gathering. I read a bunch of magic novels. I know a lot of the lore. People who play card games are like, "Did you play this set?" And I'm like, "No."
But I
And
know exactly who Jace is. Yeah.
yeah, and well, I have played Magic. It's just read novels from I haven't played because like I don't know, played Magic. It's expensive.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
a hobby for people with more time and money than I.
the nice thing about the way that we're treating the TTRPG of Dark Veil is that we understand, and this isn't the first project I've worked on. This is my second big,
Mhm.
I would say big is in 350 plus page TTRPG book. I wrote Crowmore back in 2014. I've done some board games and some card games. So in tackling this one of the things we wanted to avoid was that textbook feel
Right.
of the game. So we have multiple writers that are writing, and when you have a lot of different writers, you have to be very specific with the direction of what they're going to be writing. So we sit down and we work very diligently with each writer to focus on what their passion is first. Find out what they're really excited about with the product, because we don't just want to give somebody an assignment and then say, go ahead and write this, whether you're interested in it or not. This is your assignment. We want them to actually be interested in the subject matter they're talking about. So we set them up, we figure out what that is, and then they are told you have different parameters that you have to kind of follow based on what you're doing. If they're writing in the core book, which is the Dark Veil role playing game book itself, they will most likely be writing for like a faction or organization and talking about lore within the world. And that
Mhm.
could come across very technical. So instead of saying, this is the area, these are the people from that area, here's what they feel, we have a way of doing a technical third person narrative that they write in, but they can add these little flavor notes of any other style of writing. So it might be a letter written from one person in a city to another person in a city within that faction. And you would kind of these will be placed on the page throughout those areas to kind of add this little story lore. And we also have these little bullet points of hooks for players and storytellers that are things that they could do within the game based on those information bullet points on those different sections of those pages. So you're going to be thrown at these three different pieces of lore every section of content that we have. So it kind of breaks up that idea of this is just a textbook driving information. You have to kind of really, burn your eyes out trying to get through the whole book to read that content of. But yeah, we're really consciously making those choices with the lore we choose. All of the organizations, which work similarly to classes in other games,
Mm-hmm.
you join an organization at the beginning of the game. They also have a great deal of story-based lore that basically identifies that organization for the player. So they really feel like they've learned a bit of lore, even as they're picking the organization that they're going to play their character as. So you're not just coming into it saying, oh, what's the rules of the game? Okay, I picked my classes. I picked my, the skill dice that I want. And now I start. You've already kind
You
of
want to
engaged in that
go
lore.
ahead and get a hook, something to get you
Yep.
like invested in the world. And I really like
Yep.
that. Like, I mean, it's not super prevalently used, but like they have factions within fifth edition, especially if you're playing the organized play program. We're bringing them back, by the way, everyone who was angry about the way. And like that's great. Like having something like that to where you're like, okay, I am, a member of this guild and like we have an overarching cause. Whether that's like Robin Hood-esque given back to the people who need it, or, whether your cause is as simple as like, we really don't want anyone besides us to have this magic technology, etc., whatever. So we're gonna do our best to like nip that in the bud if it gets out. But that really connects you to the world, and I think that's great. And I especially like the bits that you talk about there with like having the different voices, letters, and other pieces. I assume like just some commentary in there, presented some factual information, and like have someone who maybe has an opinion in world on that information. Um,
Right.
because that really just like sets a good tone, like what to expect from the thing, from the various factions, from the various areas. Aside from just knowing like, it is here. It is in a spaceport. It is a well-traveled area. It's fairly affluential, and you're like, okay, all of that's like facts, but like, what is someone who's there all the time? Think about it. You need your travel reviews.
Exactly. We have with all the we have I want to say we have 7 writers right now that are all contracted to do different
Mhm.
parts of the book and different sections, and each one has a particular style. And one of the things that my role as creative director and the creative writer lead is to take all of their styles and bring that voicing and tone together into one common tone, so it feels like the same book that people are reading through. And so that can be a challenge sometimes for writers to write a particular way and
Ooh,
then find their
yeah.
writing even edited more. But the focus is that their ideas and their vision, the way that their prose work, um, we leave that and then we just change some of the tone to match up with the other sections, and it really flows wonderfully when you have these really flavorful, fun organizations. This ancestry group known as the Larish, that one of our writers, Tanner, she writes so wonderfully and so quirky. But then you can move into more of a rigid and kind of darker feel when you have in some of these like colder, more kingdoms era, old medieval style,
Yeah.
frozen north tundra lands. And you can feel that difference between this fun, energetic style of the ancestry of the Larish versus like a cold, rigid culture that might be living in like Kalmoria, this northern area.
Yeah, and
So it's
things are a bit more harsh there, so you have the
exactly.
same tone.
Yeah, and all of the writers bring something unique and different, and it's really exciting to see now that we're at a point where we're getting into the final drafts of some things coming through. We're not just in that starter phase, so there's a good 50,000 words at this point, that are new in this last month that I'm really excited as we dig through them
Ah.
to feel, feel all these new elements and ideas coming from these unique writers that have different perspectives than say I would have if I wrote the same material. So,
Yeah, and you've got a pretty large team actually working on this. On the Kickstarter, you've got 19 people listed, and um, looking at it, obviously, one can see that you've assembled a pretty diverse team. Kind of goes back to what you said there about wanting to have those different voices and make sure that, like, different points of view, frames of references are considered and brought into your book, because one of the cool things about Dark Veil, and that you'll very quickly learn as you get into it because introduction, is that it's not one setting or genre, you've got endless possibilities. You go from your a high fantasy D&D-esque thing, over to some, space technological stuff. You can go back to something, a bit more um,
Steampunk.
steampunk. Yeah, you can go off and have something a bit more noir horror. Like all of these realms can exist within the universe and this game even, which kind of allows you for a lot of possibility for groups who like, gosh, we're real tired of playing the same thing week after week. It's a great story, but we're just like, can we go into there? Like, what really inspired you to, I mean, be so ambitious, honestly?
Yeah, the game itself, there's a lot of other games out there that are really good at one genre.
Hmm.
They pick a genre, they do it, and a lot of times when someone will ask, what is Dark Veil? What genre is it? They ask that question just assuming that they're going to, take the idea of this game and put it in a box. And one of the things for myself is a game runner, we call them storytellers, is that over 20 years of playing games, I never liked being put in a box and in a game. And I don't think many GMs and DMs or storytellers would like to be put in a box for their games as well. They want to be able to be creative and go outside that box
Hmm.
and do wherever their story goes. And so homebrews and games can take a genre and break it a bit and make it unique and fun for what they want it to be. This universe for Dark Veil is our universe. It's just on the other side of the galaxy. So when we came up with the idea of this fractured time period, where we would say time has been fractured and every moment of time has been shuffled around like a giant puzzle, and the final version of a puzzle is every single moment of time is a different puzzle re-put back together again as one new timeline of a puzzle, except it's got these pieces from these different eras of time.
Hmm.
So it's not a time travel game. It's not a mashup game, technically. It is literally a universe where different moments of time now coexist side by side with others. And you're broken by this dark veil, this mystical kind of fog that is in between every single one of these sectors. And if you go into it, you're falling into the infinite realms, this parallel universe of possible endless places that you could go. So what they've done in the universe, and this event happened 1 year ago, so it's 1 year later, is built giant gateways between these different sectors of time. And so there's these massive gates that allow players to travel from, let's say, that medieval fantasy setting to that space setting or to a steampunk setting or to a cosmic setting. And
Not
that
stargates, but they kind of look like
nope,
stargates.
they're giant circular in some cases. They could be square. It really depends on how they break that, how they create them.
Okay.
Some of the imagery does have circles, so yes.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
Oh, but that's cool then that
so
they could be, any form really, because yeah, I've only seen the
yep,
circles, but
yeah. So basically, they're not teleportation gates. They're literally cutting a hole in the veil itself. So they're allowing access to these other sectors nearby. Characters can every player can perform magic or tactics. Every player has the ability to do anything. You can steal magic, you can steal tactics. And one of the things about the universe that we designed specifically for the way people play it is that we wanted everyone to have the ability to do anything, because if you could steal magic, that means as you go to these different time periods, you could steal the different tactics and magic of those times. And that allows those characters to grow throughout the universe and be a survivor of this new universe and setting. And that really breaks it away from that I'm playing a genre specific game where I'm a knight and, oh, I'm in a space time period, but I'm still a knight. No, you're a person that happens
Has
to have been brought up as a knight, and now you have access to these other time periods and these other settings and cultures. So we really push the limit of what can be stolen, what's available to players, what they can do, and we enforce the hooks of the story in the universe by these gates in the veil itself, by constantly pushing characters to have to get through a gate or get through a veil wall or find this way to another side.
and I kind of like that too because it drives a lot of folk narrative like gone here and like yeah your background was as you say a knight but now you see all of this and like it's all unfamiliar to you. Like what do you do with that? Like what do you choose to, take from that? Maybe, meet someone and they're like a ship mechanic and you're like, oh, this is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in my life, and I want to learn this new trait. Or maybe you see someone who's a ship mechanic and you're like, ooh, that looks like a lot of work that I want to enjoy. So I'm gonna go find this person over here, is manufacturing like spacesuits or whatever to travel and like discovery. And you're like, I'd love to go out into this unknown, terrifying abyss with you.
Yep. And the fact that players have to choose one of these organizations as their playable class kind of gives them that initial motivation. So let's say from the example of a knight, say you're an Avalan knight, you're from the Kalmorian north of Western Avala, and to become an Avalan knight, you have to walk through the Prometheus flame and um, be deemed honorable enough to not get basically burned up and sent to some unknown location. And if you walk through this flame, you become a knight and you become imbued with the power of this flame. So the Avala Knights, at this point in time, their previous leader of Western Avala has been killed, and a new leader has taken the throne. That new leader, some people feel, is not the appropriate leader of that kingdom. So some of the knights have become exiled. And so you could play a knight that is part of that kingdom that's working to protect the people of Avala, or you could be an exiled knight that has decided, I'm going to help people of other areas. So that character right out the gate has some sort of background and plot to drive their motivations and story for their character's journey. And if you were to put them in a space era setting, maybe the Order of the Veil, which is a space era faction, might hire them to go investigate some sort of conflict or problem happening in a city related to the Veil or related to some other faction or some criminal organization. And so you have that motivation from your start, but now you slowly start to maybe gain knowledge from that other space faction, or you start to learn magic from a different character from another time. And it really just allows those characters to level up during the gameplay.
I absolutely, that whole idea that like you can come in and like you've got a personality to start, but like as you're going around and experiencing all of these brand new, probably terrifying places, like it's gonna change who you are like as a person. Really affect like, and I lover of story, and like I think that's a great way to drive the story and to really like keep it going. And like obviously like you've got systems for how to do combat and everything, but even like looking through the mechanics and everything, it's obviously not the focus of the game, which I think really
Sure.
makes a big, emphasis on, your intent here to have people just go out and, explore. That seems to be like, the number one thing to do. And from there, you dive into all of the different possibilities and stories. And um, so as you're going through, like you've got a couple of areas like already definitively mapped out. So like what drove you to kind of your kingdom era, you've got your Victorian area, like why these specific ones?
Sure. Well, creating a universe that's this large, right? We
Mhm.
wanted to have a lot of different places. Some games do a really good job, and some stories do a really good job of just taking one location and then making that the catalyst for all adventures and stories. They all happen in that one place. And I think that's what we're going for is that you could potentially play your 10-20 session campaign just in this one sector. But the fact that there's these other factions from other sectors and these other cultures that interact close by really allow you to be more creative in your games, and allows for much more replay value of that universe, because you could play a character that spends 5 sessions in the sector and another 5 sessions in a different sector with one particular point of view, and then play a completely different game the opposite way around and be fighting maybe against that group. So in creating this, we looked at what is the best way to drive an organic world building kind of environment for us. Chromore that I'd already created had 10,000 years of history already kind of pre-built into that book. So we took the best moments of it. Yeah, it's a ton, and it's not all 10,000 years, obviously.
Well,
It's, 100 years, 100 years, 100 years. And we highlight these big moments of something that happened, and then those moments organically affect the next. And that's how that was written, is that you've got 30, 40 pages of content there that are all impacting the next time. And you can see how that impacted the future based on 1,000 years prior, a decision that was made or a big event that happened. And so we took all these big moments and we brought them all together in this game and said, what were the best ones? Let's grab those, and then let's just ignore all the other pieces of time and just kind of like get rid of them because they aren't that important, because we don't have a whole lot of interest in the past on them. And by doing that, we came to the conclusion that the most exciting times from our research were medieval fantasy, steam and steel, which is our steampunk, more of a diesel punk kind of feeling, space, which is the beginning of space travel, and then the cosmic era, which is like 3,000 years into the future from the earliest era. And it is lots of galactic travel and all sorts of aliens and other things happening. So those are the four that we're introducing now. We also have the Veil itself as its own time, because the realms are timeless. They have, shadow and darkness and angelic and fear and sorrow, all these different places within the realms that you could choose that have their own feeling itself. And there are all these dark sectors, we'll call them. There are 50 sectors in total on the planet that we're initially launching with. There are also dark sectors within there that the players don't know if it's thousands of years in the past or thousands of years in the future. So it's completely other time periods that could be thrown in.
Okay.
So there are quite a few, and we plan on introducing other specific time periods with future products as well.
All right, yeah, so you're giving yourself a lot of room for expansion. And so we've been talking a lot about the different places that you've got. So, obviously you got to have some driving impetus for like going on, and like there being, well, there doesn't have to be a danger, but it keeps things interesting. But you do have also, alongside all of your really cool like NPCs and all of that, you have some pretty serious threats going on in the game. Which we're familiar with, monsters, demons and demigods, and just pure evil that fill these various realms. And I imagine that, you've gone through and similarly envisioned, thematic monsters for each of these eras. And you can see a lot of those in the quick play, obviously. But I, I've just been kind of, noodling through like what I would imagine as like big demigods and like demons from like some of these eras. And like it's kind of enthralling to think about like how demons would be different in these various eras. Like a steampunk demon is going to be, inherently different from, the demon that you would in tales of Victorian age, or obviously we all are familiar with the classic, finally as hell we fantasy. But there's just so much opportunity there to like show different things and unified them all. Managed to unify all of your bad guys through the Prime Initiate, which I thought was a really cool concept to like unify all of these different, myriad options got there.
So the Prime Initiate, yes, is a big bad enemy, I would say. A lot of people will look at it that way. We like to look at all of our factions as gray area. I personally can't look at the Prime Initiate as not being evil. They have this. They're the Thanos of the universe that's coming through and collecting everyone on their side. But there's also the League of Demons, which is another faction. So the demons themselves aren't necessarily allied with the Prime Initiate. The Prime Initiate is actually the big faction from our cosmic era. And so they're really the ones in the future that are battling a galactic war, that have found, hey, that we're better together. We need to be unified to be able to fight off these other problems that exist. So their philosophy is that we're better together and stronger because there's bigger things out there that you may not realize. And we're not going to worry about these little conflicts that you have. We're just going to say, join us or just get out of our way. And so that's their methodology to solving their problems, which makes them an inherent evil in a way.
Right.
The League of Demons has these other objectives. So they're from the realms, and they are run by the king of the shadow realm is actually Avanastarin, which is the big evil demon. That particular demon has gathered up all the other demons from other realms who normally would not have any sort of single leader. They'd all be independent and working their own angles, and basically decided to bring them all together to find ways into our reality, our universe. We need to break through the veil and get to these sectors and collect souls, because that's how they trade in
Hmm.
their universe of like, we need souls. We need these humanoid souls to uh, trade or to be powerful with, or to consume.
Right.
And
More you have, the more power and more glory and the more respect you get from your
exactly.
fellow. Yeah.
So there's all these gray area occult groups and organizations that might work with both the Prime Initiative or the League of Demons, and it's in those gray area conflicts of this group's working with that faction, this faction's working with this one, where you get all those fun conflicts in your games, and that's where your players are. They're playing through the campaign, and as a storyteller, you can all of a sudden throw another faction in, and it just completely adds this huge other element to that story for the players. And they go, wait, that group's involved too? Oh wait, they're
You're like,
working with them.
you're like,
And
I
it just
thought they were the good guys. And you're like, what?
yeah. Well, it's up to you.
Yes and
Um,
no.
yeah, and that to me is always what's exciting in a game.
Mhm.
Is just not knowing who the real enemy is, and it allows those campaigns that you play week after week in these TTRPG games, that they can keep going on, and there isn't really you can set a final, like, this is the big battle, we finished it, we're retiring our characters, or you can just keep pushing that story forward in your universe, and you create that conflict as you keep adding more and more. And we'll give
Mhm.
you the guidelines and say, here's how these groups interact with each other, here's how they feel against them, but you're going to be the most creative storyteller, better than we can in your own games.
Right, and you've even got so much flexibility with these and like the moral ambiguity that like they could be a good guy in one place, but then, some of their members have traveled to another place where they are objectively the bad guys. And,
Yes.
it really brings like a lot of, different, like you say, the word opportunities, but yeah, opportunities to really like make these choices as to like how do you want the world to be, your group. And um I think that's going to give it a lot of like, even if people are constantly starting new campaigns because somebody wants to play plus level whatever for whatever reason, like it still gives it a lot of replayability. You could sit here, you could play this game from, level 1 to 10 100 times and it'd be a completely different story every time, like not even remotely same.
The fact of leveling was a big part of designing this game. Of, do we include levels? How do we level up characters? And once we really dug into this
Hmm.
idea that a character could steal magic with their skill. Literally, you don't level up and pick a new trait with it. You in real time during the game, if an enemy does a spell and you say, I really like that spell, can I roll to try to steal it? Yeah, you can. Oh, I found a book with a spell in it, or I found a spell etched on a wall. You can attempt that and do that spell. Whether you learn it temporarily or permanently, your character is now grown and changed. So if you and I both create characters, in our first session,
Hmm.
but we both start doing different things throughout the game, our characters will slowly become so uniquely different because of the things that we've been more interested in, and because of the spells that we've individually stolen, or the tactics that we've stole, and the organizations that we maybe fall into as we're playing. And those are really where you level up. You join more organizations and you unlock unique traits specific to those organizations. There aren't any levels in this game. You can
Right.
level up your skill dice. So you gain more dice by spending story points, we call them. So it's literally your experiences, your story points that you're rewarded after playing. And you can unlock additional organizations. So that's how your character grows. So you're 100% right. At 10 sessions go by and you can play a completely different character and have started in the exact same place.
And then, for people who obviously are are into this, the Kickstarter is currently ongoing, and you've got a lot of great content there, and some possibilities even for people to unlock like more character, not necessarily in the book, but miniatures, which miniatures are also phenomenal. So, multi-talented, multifaceted talent here at this company, obviously. Um, and for people who want to get into game, like you've got a lot of different, on ramps for them for like as much as they want to invest and build out the world and have the bits and bobs. And I think you have a well put together game. You also have a very well put together Kickstarter. Um,
Thanks. Yeah, we've worked really hard on getting that right. You'll see that our Kickstarter, if you're joining it today or in the next few days, it's not where we would love it to be numerically, right? Like we're a brand new company.
mhm,
We don't have the million person mailing list that some of these other bigger companies have. But what we do have is a really talented team, and thanks to our artists and Hexy Studios, who combined between our concept artists and Hexy Studio team that did our 3D miniatures. We have these incredible miniatures. Now, there's no movement calculation in our game. So you might ask, well, why do you have miniatures? Well, it's because you don't need to calculate movement. You don't need a game board to play Darkville, but we all love miniatures, and these miniatures
yeah,
represent
yeah,
the heroes. Um, and so we wanted to offer these miniatures to players as kind of this special, like, hey, we're going to give you something bigger for these characters, and you can use them in any games. They're going to look awesome. And we have a card game that's actually the Tavern Dark Veil game, which is a really, really fun card game that we actually made as a
hmm
game that you play within the game. So there's this unique card game that people have now played across these different sectors. So it fits into the lore of the universe. And it's just a fun game. And actually, we have a ton of time just playing that game all the time. And, between the storyteller, the dice mat, the storyteller screen, the map. There's a lot of really cool rewards for those higher tier items. Now, um, full disclosure, we haven't yet met our goal for Kickstarter, and it's
very
really about,
ambitious.
yeah, and to do all these high level things to give that quality that we'd like to give to our players is to really need to have those bigger numbers. And we would need even bigger numbers to unlock some of the great things that we have planned. And there's a few things planned here to unlock even more miniatures and extra content, and a few other items right out the gate to like 150K at that marker. We have all the way up to thousands and thousands of numerical unlocks. We have about 100 unlocks itself that we planned for, but we weren't sure what the audience was going to be like. And
Right.
I do want to let everyone know, if they do look at our Kickstarter and say, oh, well, they don't have a whole lot of funding, so I'm not going to back it. Keep in mind that if we hit our goal, this game is being made. If we don't hit our goal, this game's still being made.
Okay,
We
that was the
just
next
won't
question I
have,
was going to ask.
yeah, we just, this isn't an all or nothing. This is a company with um, a large amount of products we're ready to make. Our board game is just working on art right now. It's ready to go next year. We're really excited about that. We're really excited about future expansions to the Dark Veil TTRPG. We have a lot of content. We have writers working on things that won't even be released yet until later next year. So, we have a lot of content prepared. Kickstarter is one way to gain money. It's
Right.
just an industry, I think, standard for TTRPGs that they do a Kickstarter, and how successful the Kickstarter is if that game gets made. The thing that yeah,
Yeah.
is the thing that exists though is a lot of those games don't get made, or they don't get finished, or they are done once and then there's nothing after it.
hmm
And we're trying to create a new um, company that is a company of inclusive culture. We're a company of games that are really accessible. You can pick up and learn this game in 5 to 10 minutes. And by the end of an hour, 2 hour session, you will feel like you've been playing it for a long period of time. And that's not just because I created it, but that's what every player says when they play the
Yeah,
game.
it took me
And you
like
can watch,
30 minutes to do the quick start, including all of the characters. I'd spent a lot of time staring at the characters. So probably could have said it quick.
yeah, and that's reading all the skills and reading all the details and figuring how to play as a storyteller and create NPCs on the
Yeah,
fly. I
don't even
run
need
this
all that.
game. Yeah, I run this game as an improv now. I don't plan anything for this game. It's incredibly exciting to watch the players drive with the way the skills work. And the goal for us is just to keep making games that are very easy to pick up and learn, and that allow for so many options so that replay is there. And obviously, you can see our quality and the pride we take into our content that we're creating. And we want to, and I want to, as this business, create a company that, one, inclusive for all sorts of different personalities and people and different opinions and perspectives. But at the same time, we're not a company that is at least right now, we're not a company that's proactively fighting a fight for anyone. We're here to make fun games. That's our goal today. We need to be established before we can start fighting any fights for anyone. But we want to make really fun games because that's what got us to do this. If there isn't an audience for us to make those fun games, we'll make a different type of game. It's something that we are just in love with the storytelling aspect. We love telling stories. We love watching people get excited about the stories that we've
Mm-hmm.
created for them to tell, and that's the goal. And so what we're trying to do here is build a company, build a brand, and we're just really so far. I mean, the amount of backers and the support we've had so far has been fantastic. People seem to love the game, and those that have played it or read it are really excited. And we're excited to keep presenting more material for them.
So I mean, aside from like, what are you going to do if it doesn't fun? The other question is going to be like for people who do back it, and if it doesn't fun, which I'm hoping it funds. I think it should fun. That's
Yeah,
just my opinion, obviously. Where are they going to be able to buy it? Since you're going to release it anyways, is it just going to be available through your website?
yeah. So I hope backers hear this because I haven't told anybody this, and we're not publicly stating it. But the backers that do back it, if we don't fund, are going to be thanked in a big way. So
Hmm.
whether that's free copies of PDFs or free swag of some kind, if we can get to that point and do that for them, absolutely. I think the key for them is that we want to say thank you
For
for
believing in you.
helping,
Yeah.
yeah, for believing it, for reading it, for being part of it, and not just being oh, this game has 4,000 backers and I'm going to get these extra things because I'm going to put my money on that because I want more stuff. That's great. And there's a lot of backers that are just looking for stuff. And we have a lot of stuff that we can give you too.
Yes.
But the people that are really invested in it and invested in us is we're going to hang on to you, and we're going to make stuff for you, and we're going to listen to your words, and we'll probably be looking to that group of people to say, hey, what do you want to see next? Like, you were the original group. What would you like to see? And in a year or two, if our company starts growing bigger and bigger, your voice becomes really powerful. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and so that'll be something that we'll continually engage with them. And that's just join our Discord if you're any of those people. We're constantly playing games and talking about the game over there. So pop in.
And aside from obviously, being able to be involved in like it's so nice to have a community with smaller game companies, publishing press, whatever you want to think of yourself as, because like people do get to be a part of it. And it's, as a creator, there's just something magical about being like that involved in the hobby that you love. Like even if, your fans aren't actually doing the creation, company is, but like still being involved in the creative process at all, it just, it really makes you feel the magic of the community. Because that's one thing about the tabletop RPG community is that like, we are all role players. We all are used to doing collaborative stuff. And so, we're a very welcoming, opening um words group. And we just want to share our passion and our love and like our ideas with one another. And so, that's one of the things that really struck me about this, like going through and looking at your team that you have assembled. That, regardless of what happens with this project, you have so much potential. And I'm very much looking, personally, to seeing, where do you go from here? And, especially, don't read the fine print on the Kickstarters. You're out of Wilmington, North Carolina, so need more games from the Southeast, the U.S. No offense to everyone else in the world, but like underrepresented part of the country, and
Uh, I bet some people would throw their arms up from Charlotte, North Carolina. I know there's a lot of companies,
yeah,
small groups out there.
yeah,
Um,
and people don't even know about it. I lived in Tennessee the majority of my life. I am no longer in the Southeast, but like, um, I take every chance to go to bat for people down there. Wonderfully talented people, and voices are important from that area of the country. Well, not just like the Pacific Northwest.
yeah,
And
well, It's interesting you say that. I think I'm the only one from the Southeast, and I'm actually originally a New Yorker. So, I've been down here a while, but our company may not live forever in Wilmington,
Yeah.
and that's a key element to this. Is we may be a Chicago-based company, we may be a London-based company. Like, we could move wherever we want.
Mhm.
With COVID the way it is, we have team members in London, in New York, in Chicago, in British Columbia, in Australia, in Texas, in Malaysia. We have team members all over the map. In
Yeah.
Poland, we've been working with individuals. That's not our company, but that's a third-party team that we've been working with in Poland. There are people all over, and the key element of this is that it's not. I don't get together with anybody and roll dice on the weekends. With COVID, I'm on a screen like
Yeah.
this. Playing games online. One of the wonderful things about this game is that you don't need that game board, and you can play it all basically with a dice roller, or just, hey, get some d6 and roll them in front of you.
Yeah.
And
Pull up your
this,
Discord and have go.
yeah, it wasn't intentional that COVID and this just lined up, but it's really interesting kind of effect that the live streams that we play, or we bring in I'll call them like TTRPG influencers for some of the bigger games that we run. They're all used to just playing games via Zoom or via Twitch on such a regular cadence that it's very appealing, this game, for them, because all they have to do is grab some d6 and start going, and they don't have to have everything else in front of them to play. And surprisingly, it's become like a very easy game to do an actual play of. It plays quick,
And you don't need
and
extensive background of the
right,
world, because we all have some genres are, and so got some kind of, ground set to go from
exactly.
without having to get like bogged down in the overwhelming amount of backstory available for some
Yeah.
settings.
I think there's a lot of fear, and I know from reading, different comments on social media or hearing from things in our feedback, is there's a lot of fear of people to run a game for the first time, for one, because they're afraid to run a game. The other step is really that people are afraid to run something they're not familiar fully with. I need to know every single thing happening in this universe before I start playing this game.
Incorrect. Completely
Yeah,
incorrect.
read one paragraph of something you find interesting, and then just go with it.
Yeah.
And that's where you start the game, and then just build everything else from it, and use our lore and use the setting that's built up. All the characters are going to have their own lore from this organization they're from. If you have 3 or 4 characters, that's 4 different organizations of lore that's just been added to your content that you don't really even need to know they know.
Yeah.
And
They
you can
have
then build
their
off that.
motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of excitement for a storyteller to be able to just kind of go and just, you don't have to really think too hard. All you have to do is just take care of the players, make sure that they're constantly having something new and exciting happening.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. Like, new people coming in, like, you shouldn't be afraid to pick it up because it's a new game. It's very accessible. It's meant to be very, like, you grab it, you read it a little bit, and then, like, all right, I'm good, let's go, let's do it. And that's, not just people before, but like, it is at its heart, it's a storytelling game. And like, storytelling is one of the oldest pastimes in the world, if not the oldest. We won't mention the other old pastime. But population. But it's that easy. Like, everyone always throughout their life been telling stories. Different than that. Like, this is just you telling stories with friends. So yeah, absolutely. Pick it up, make up your own stories with your friends, and your dogs. Don't want to be left out of anything. Neil, no. But that said, I do want to thank you. We are about at the end of our time, so I do want to thank you so much, Julian, for being on the show today.
Just wants to be a part.
Yeah, there's someone else. Fine. Neil. All right, well, we're just gonna talk over it. Yeah, to your door, dude.
That's fine.
Thank you so much for being a part of this episode today and for sharing a bit more about your universe. Um, because it's really just like got a lot going on, and I hope that your ends up. I really do, but regardless of that, look to see what comes from you. Where find you online, find your stuff, and then obviously I'll get a link to the Kickstarter when I.
Yeah, for right now, darkveilstudio.com will give you basically everywhere that you need to go. Darkveilstudio.com is our website. You'll see links to the Kickstarter there. You'll get access to whether you want to download it through our store or download through our members section. You can get the quick play and even an adventure to run for free. So go ahead and grab those, grab pre-made characters. Get yourself started off learning about the Dark Veil universe. If you're a little timid and you're not ready to play it on your own yet, drop by our Discord and say, hey, I'm looking for a game. And there's bound to be somebody that's ready to run a game for you on our Discord and or help you run a game yourself and even maybe play with you. So drop by the darkveilstudio.com site. You can follow us on Twitter at darkveilstudio. And of course, on the Kickstarter link that will be posted here.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you again for. That is going to be it for this episode of the Designer's Den. I have a lot more exciting guests lined up for this month for everyone to see. So looking forward to that. But until next time, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.